On a freezing winter night in New York City, 16-year-old Noah Parker sat alone under an old bridge, wrapping himself in a torn blanket that could barely protect him from the cold wind. 3 years earlier, he had lost both of his parents in a car accident and had been moved from one foster home to another until he finally ran away. Life on the streets was hard, but Noah had made one promise to his mother before she died. She had held his hand in the hospital and whispered, "No matter how difficult life becomes, never steal and never lie. A good heart will open doors that money never can." Those words stayed with him every single day. Every morning, Noah collected empty bottles and cleaned shop windows for a few dollars. Some people smiled at him, but most ignored him as if he didn't exist. One afternoon, after hours of searching for work, he sat down on a bench in Central Park. Suddenly, he noticed a black leather wallet lying on the ground. He looked around, but no one seemed to be searching for it. Slowly, he opened the wallet. Inside were hundreds of dollars, several credit cards, and an old family photograph. The picture showed a little girl smiling beside an older man. On the back of the photo, someone had written, "To Grandpa James, thank you for always protecting me." Noah's stomach growled with hunger. The money inside the wallet could feed him for months. For a moment, he closed his eyes and thought about his mother. Then he stood up. "I'm going to return it," he whispered. He checked the identification card and found an address on the other side of the city. The journey would take almost 3 hours on foot. As the sun began to set, Noah finally reached a large mansion surrounded by iron gates. A security guard stopped him. "What do you want?" "I found a wallet. I think it belongs to Mr. James Harrison." The guard laughed. "You expect me to believe that a homeless kid walked all the way here to return a wallet full of money?" Noah nodded quietly. A few minutes later, an elderly man walked outside. The moment he saw the wallet, his eyes widened. "My wallet? Where did you find it?" "In the park, sir." James opened it carefully. Nothing was missing. He looked at Noah. "You didn't take a single dollar?" Noah shook his head. "My mother taught me that keeping something that doesn't belong to me would make me poor forever." For a moment, James couldn't speak. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a $100 bill. "Take this." Noah stepped back. "No, sir. I didn't return it for money." James stared at the boy. For 70 years, he had met politicians, businessmen, and celebrities. But he had never met someone with so little who was willing to give up so much. Just before Noah left, James asked, "What's your name?" "Noah Parker." The old man's face suddenly turned pale. "What did you say?" "Noah Parker." James began to shake. "Your mother's name? Was it Sarah?" Noah froze. "Yes." "How do you know my mother?" The old man slowly reached into his coat and pulled out another photograph. It was an old family picture. Standing beside James was a young woman. She looked exactly like Noah's mother. Tears filled the old man's eyes. He looked at Noah and whispered, "My God, I've been searching for you for 10 years. Noah stood there in complete silence. He had come to return a lost wallet, but somehow he had just found a family he never knew he had. Noah felt as if the ground beneath his feet had disappeared. The old man standing in front of him was looking at him with tears in his eyes. For years, Noah had believed that everyone connected to his family was gone. Yet here stood a stranger who knew his mother's name. "Who are you?" Noah asked quietly. The old man struggled to speak. "My name is James Harrison, and Sarah was my daughter." Noah's heart stopped. "What?" James nodded slowly. "Sarah was my daughter." "That means you're my grandson." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Noah couldn't believe what he was hearing. His mother had never mentioned any wealthy family. She had never spoken about a grandfather named James. James invited Noah inside the mansion. It was the first time in years that Noah sat in a warm room. A fireplace crackled softly while a housekeeper brought food. Noah stared at the table in disbelief. There was more food in front of him than he had eaten in an entire week. As Noah ate, James began telling a story he had kept buried for years. Many years earlier, Sarah Harrison had fallen in love with a young mechanic named Michael Parker. James had strongly opposed the relationship because Michael came from a poor family. He wanted his daughter to marry into wealth and status. "I thought money could protect her from every hardship," James said, lowering his head. "I was wrong." When Sarah refused to leave Michael, James made a terrible mistake. He forced her to choose between her family and the man she loved. She chose love. After that, Sarah left home and cut off contact with her father. Years later, James regretted his actions and tried to find her, but she had moved several times. Then one day, he learned that Sarah and Michael had died in a car accident. "I searched for you after that," James whispered. but the records were incomplete. I never found where you were sent." Noah sat silently. Part of him felt angry. His mother had struggled her entire life while this wealthy grandfather lived in a mansion. But another part of him saw the pain in the old man's eyes. James wasn't pretending. He genuinely regretted what he had done. That night, James offered Noah a room in the mansion. "You belong here." But Noah hesitated. For years, the streets had taught him not to trust anyone too quickly. The next morning, while exploring the house, Noah noticed a locked room at the end of a hallway. A maid accidentally left the door slightly open. Inside were dozens of photographs. Every picture showed Sarah, his mother. Some photos were from her childhood. Some were from her teenage years. One wall was completely covered with newspaper clippings and investigation reports. James had spent years trying to find her. Suddenly, Noah realized something. The old man had never stopped loving his daughter. He had simply let his pride destroy their relationship. That afternoon, James introduced Noah to the rest of the family. Unfortunately, not everyone was happy to see him. James's son, Richard Harrison, looked furious. Richard had spent years expecting to inherit the family fortune. Now a grandson had suddenly appeared, an heir, a threat. At dinner, Richard forced a smile. "Welcome to the family." But Noah could feel the hostility behind his words. A few days later, strange things began happening. Important documents disappeared. Jewelry went missing, and somehow, people kept blaming Noah. One evening, a diamond necklace vanished from a safe. Richard immediately pointed at Noah. Who else could have taken it? The staff looked suspicious. Noah felt humiliated. He had spent his entire life trying to prove he wasn't a thief. Now he was being accused. Again, James refused to believe it. "My grandson returned a wallet full of money when nobody was watching. He would never steal." But Richard continued pushing the accusations. Then security footage revealed something shocking. The person who had entered the room wasn't Noah. It was Richard himself. The entire family watched the recording in stunned silence. Richard's face turned white. James looked at his son with disappointment. "You framed him." Richard couldn't answer. Years of jealousy had finally exposed his true character. For the first time, Noah realized that wealth didn't automatically make people better. Some of the richest people carried the poorest hearts. A week later, James made a life-changing announcement. He planned to create a foundation in Sarah's name to help homeless children across America, and he wanted Noah to help lead it. Tears filled Noah's eyes. His mother had once struggled to survive. Now her name would help thousands of children find hope. But Noah had no idea that an even bigger secret was about to emerge. A secret hidden for nearly 20 years. A secret connected to the car accident that killed his parents. And when that truth finally came out, it would change everything. The night after James announced the Sarah Harrison Foundation, Noah couldn't sleep. Something about the old family photographs kept bothering him. His mother's smile looked genuine, but in the last picture she had ever taken with her family, there was sadness in her eyes. The next morning, James called Noah into his study. He opened a small wooden box that had remained locked for many years. "Your mother left this behind," James said. Inside was a silver necklace, a few letters, and a small diary. Noah carefully opened the diary. The first page read, "If my son ever reads this, I want him to know that I never stopped loving him. I left because I wanted him to grow up free from hatred and greed." Noah's hands began to shake. As he turned the pages, he discovered something unexpected. His mother had written that she was afraid. Someone had been threatening their family. At first, Noah thought it was just fear and imagination. But the last entry changed everything. "If anything happens to Michael and me, it was not an accident." Noah looked at James. "What does this mean?" James looked confused. "I've never seen those pages before." Before they could continue, the family lawyer rushed into the room. "Mr. Harrison, someone broke into the company archives last night." "What was stolen?" "The old business records from 20 years ago." James stood up immediately. Those records covered the same period when Sarah and Michael had died. Meanwhile, Richard Harrison was secretly meeting someone in an abandoned warehouse outside town. "You promised this secret would stay buried," Richard whispered. A shadowy figure answered. "As long as nobody finds the missing file, you're safe." Richard looked nervous. "What if Noah discovers the truth?" The man smiled. "Then he'll disappear." The same roof all along. The police officer's words echoed in Noah's mind long after he left the mansion. It wasn't an accident, and someone inside this family may have helped plan it. For the first time in his life, Noah felt afraid of knowing the truth. James Harrison looked heartbroken. He had already lost his daughter, and now he was learning that her death might have been planned. The officer handed Noah a small envelope. We found this hidden inside the evidence box. It was never opened. Noah carefully unfolded the paper. It was a letter written in his mother's handwriting. If you are reading this, then something has gone terribly wrong. Michael and I discovered that someone was stealing money from the Harrison Construction Company. We refused to stay silent because innocent workers were losing their jobs while a few greedy people became rich. The person responsible warned us to keep quiet. If anything happens to us, promise me that my son will grow up knowing that his parents chose honesty over fear. James sat down in silence. His hands were trembling. I failed her, he whispered. The police investigation quickly uncovered old financial records. Millions of dollars had disappeared from the company years earlier. Only 2 people had access to those accounts, Lindsay Harrison and Richard Harrison. James immediately handed over every document he owned. If my own mistakes hurt my family, I want the truth to come out. Meanwhile, Richard was hiding in an old cabin outside the city. News reports filled the television screen. Police reopened 20-year-old Harrison family investigation. Richard switched off the TV and slammed his fist against the wall. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. Richard opened it. Standing outside was an older man wearing a dark coat. "You told me this secret would never come back," Richard shouted. The stranger looked calm. "You were the one who panicked. What if Noah finds out everything?" The stranger smiled. "He won't unless you make another mistake." Back at the mansion, Noah was cleaning his mother's old diary when a folded piece of paper slipped from between the pages. It was a drawing, a child's drawing. At the bottom, his mother had written, "For Noah's 18th birthday." Noah stared at the picture. It showed a small house with a garden, a father, a mother, a little boy, and one sentence: "No matter what happens, home is wherever love survives." Tears rolled down Noah's face. His parents had dreamed of giving him a peaceful life. Instead, he had spent years sleeping on cold sidewalks. James quietly placed a hand on his grandson's shoulder. "I'm sorry." Noah looked at him. "You can't change the past. I know, but you can help me protect the future." The next day, police located Richard's cabin. By the time they arrived, he was gone. However, they found something unexpected. An old safe. Inside the safe were business papers, bank records, and a videotape. The tape was nearly 20 years old. Everyone gathered in the mansion to watch it. The screen flickered to life. A younger Richard appeared. He was arguing with Noah's father, Michael Parker. Michael shouted, "I'm going to tell James everything." Richard answered, "If you do, you'll destroy this family." Michael refused to back down. Then the recording suddenly ended. The room became completely silent. Richard had lied for years. He had known Noah's parents. He had threatened them. But the biggest surprise came seconds later. Hidden inside the same safe was another envelope. It contained a confession. Not from Richard, from someone else. James opened it. His eyes widened. "What is it?" Noah asked. James could barely speak. "This letter says Richard didn't act alone." Noah felt his heart pounding. "Who helped him?" James slowly looked toward the family portrait hanging above the fireplace. His voice broke. "The person who planned everything was someone we trusted more than anyone." At that exact moment, the front door opened. An elegant woman walked into the mansion. She smiled calmly at everyone. "Hello, James." Noah looked confused. "Who is she?" James's face turned pale. "This is Elizabeth Carter, our family lawyer for the last 20 years. The woman looked directly at Noah. Then she smiled. "I've been waiting a very long time to meet you." Noah suddenly noticed something strange. Around Elizabeth's neck hung an old silver necklace. It was identical to the one his mother used to wear. And deep inside, Noah realized something terrifying. The biggest secret about his parents' deaths had not been hidden by an enemy. It had been hidden by someone the family trusted every single day. That night, the storm outside felt heavier than ever, as if the sky itself was holding secrets it could no longer keep. Noah stood in the empty hallway of the old mansion, staring at the letter trembling in his hands. The name written at the bottom changed everything he believed. Elizabeth was not who she claimed to be. Elizabeth finally stepped out of the shadows. Her eyes were calm, but there was pain hidden deep inside them. She said nothing for a long moment, as if she had been waiting years for this silence. Then she spoke softly. She was never just a stranger in Noah's life. She was connected to his past in a way he could never imagine, through a truth that had been buried after a betrayal long ago. Meanwhile, Richard was running out of time. The choices he made in the past were catching up with him like a closing trap. The people he trusted had already turned their backs What he thought was power was slowly collapsing into ashes. By the time he realized the truth, it was already too late to fix anything. Richard didn't just lose control, he lost his place in the story entirely. Noah, shaken and confused, demanded answers, and Elizabeth finally revealed it all. The accident that destroyed his family years ago was not an accident. Someone close had orchestrated it, and the reason was far deeper than money or revenge. It was about hiding a truth that could destroy multiple lives. And Noah himself was never just an innocent bystander, he was the key witness to everything that was erased. The moment the truth fully hit him, Noah felt like the ground disappeared beneath his feet. Everything he knew, his memories, his trust, even his identity, was rewritten in a single night, and in the final moment, Elizabeth said something that froze him completely. "The story isn't over yet, Noah, because the one who started all of this is still alive."